So we just learned that cell references in Excel are always relative cell references, right? They're always spatial references. And so just like I have highlighted here as a reminder, we're looking at the cells in this range above where our equation is. And every time we move that, that range of cells is going to move with it. How do we change things to be absolute cell references? And what I mean by absolute cell references is, for example, this average equation where we're averaging the daily low temperatures for every month across the year. How can we make sure that we're always, absolutely always referring to that set of cells and it's not going to change? To make our cell references absolute cell references, we add dollar signs in between each column and row in the arguments of the equation. And so right up here, I can do it manually. I'll show you another way to do this. We can just add in dollar signs before each column and row. And now, magically, this has become an absolute cell reference. Because of those dollar signs, I can now move this equation, move this function around wherever I want to, and it's always going to point back to these original cells. And so we'll test this right now. You see over here on the right, I've created a new location for these summaries. So this will be a good way to test this. So if I copy and paste, remember when I copy a cell, it brings the underlying equation, the underlying formula with it. If I copy that over here, oh, look at that. Click up here, and it's referring to those cells, those original cells, and we get the same answer. We get 48.7, just like we had before. Remember, what it would be doing if it was still using relative cell references is it would actually be looking way up off the top of the sheet, right? It would be looking up 4 cells and then for a range of 12 cells up above that. But we fixed that now. Let's do this also with mean daily high temperature per month. So we'll come over here, and I'll show you a shortcut for doing this. We can just highlight that equation in the formula bar, and instead of typing in the dollar signs, we'll just hit F4. And F4 automatically converts that relative cell reference to an absolute cell reference. Now this is not going to change, and we can do the same things. We can copy, we can paste that to the daily high, and it's going to update just like that. So this is a very important thing to understand as you start working in more advanced tasks in Excel and working with other people's spreadsheets where they're probably referring to different cells, and you need to be able to know if you're dealing with an absolute or a relative cell reference. Very, very important in more advanced applications in Excel. I'm going to show you a couple other ways that we can solve this same problem though. Let's now look at this average precipitation per month. 88.96-ish millimeters per month around here. And so what we want to do now is we want to look at different ways that we can move this value over. So one way we can do is we can take advantage of something that's called paste special. So I just copied, now I'm going to right click, and you may have noticed that we have these paste options, these paste special options. And one of these options is we can just paste the values. So let's do that. Click on that. And what happens here is now only the value has been moved over. So if we click, we see that there's no longer an equation, there's no formula underlying that, there's only the value. So if we only want to move the value, the result of an equation, we can do that paste special paste values. There's a drawback to that. So let's say we delete June from our data set. You can see temperature updates. But over here on the right, precipitation does not update. It changed here because we lost the value for June. It does not update over here because we only pasted that number. So this isn't necessarily the best option. I'm going to undo those. I'm hitting Control-Z to undo those deletions I did. Pasting those values by themselves is not always the best option because now that value will never update. Maybe that's how we want to do it sometimes, but we need to be careful and we need to make sure that's really what we want to do. So I'm going to show you one other option here. We can do another copy, and we're going to do another paste special. And what we can do is we can paste a link. And what we've just done is we now are linking to this cell. We don't have the equation in there anymore. We're saying it is equal to cell E20. So cell M4 is always going to equal E20, and we know it's always going to equal E20 because we're using an absolute cell reference there, because we see those dollar signs. As I mentioned, understanding this distinction between relative and absolute cell references is very, very important as you start working in more advanced spreadsheets, and especially when you start working with other people's spreadsheets, and you need to figure out how those cells are referring to each other and what people are doing in their equations, functions, and formulas. We'll have some applications of this very soon, but now you know the difference between relative and absolute cell references in Excel.